I think that the strongest argument for atheism would be the argument from the hiddenness of God. If God existed, it would be so easy for him to make his existence so much clearer than it is. God seems to be hiding from us, and this can be really a source of tremendous anguish. Just recently, I received an email from someone who says, I cried out to God to give me some sort of a sign, some indication that he's there. And there was just silence. And that creates the suspicion that there's nobody there. And so this argument from the hiddenness of God, I think, is very powerful. Now, the way I would answer it is twofold. First, the argument assumes that there are no good arguments for the existence of God. When you read those philosophers who press the hiddenness of God, they all assume that there's nothing on the other side of the scales in favor of the existence of God, and I completely disagree with that. I think that God has revealed himself to us in the creation of the universe, the fine-tuning of the universe for intelligent life, the applicability of mathematics to physical phenomena, the objectivity of moral values and duties in the world, as well as the very possibility of God's existence, not to mention the historical evidence for Jesus and his resurrection. So I don't think God's been hidden at all. Now, as to why he does remain hidden to us and doesn't reveal himself in particular to each of us, here my appeal would be to Molinism. The doctrine of middle knowledge says that God knows what every individual would freely do in any circumstances in which God would create him. And what that means is that God knows how much evidence to give us that would be effective in winning people's free consent and not being coercive. And in the case of people who don't believe the evidence that God has given, I think it's very likely that they still wouldn't believe even if God had given more evidence. And God knows that, and therefore isn't obligated to give them more evidence because it wouldn't do any good. Now, keep in mind here that God's purpose is not just to get people to add another item to their ontological inventory of things that exist. If God had written his name in the stars or inscribed on every molecule or atom, God exists, that might lead people to believe that God exists. But that wouldn't imply that they would therefore come to know God and love him and come into this eternal saving relationship with him, which is what God is really interested in. In fact, they might begin to chafe under these brazen advertisements of the Creator and resent him for his effrontery. So I think that God knows what degree of evidence to give us that will win an affirmative free response for those with an open mind and an open heart, and knows that had he given any more evidence, it wouldn't have been any more effective in bringing people to come to know him and his salvation.